Webflow is my favorite tool for creating websites. It's easy to use, has plenty of flexible design elements, and makes it super easy to update your content even after the website is built with their CMS collection system. Today I'm going to be showing you how you can build the perfect Webflow site in just 10 minutes. All right, before we dig into Webflow, let's take a look at the Figma design that we're going to build out today. If you don't already know, Figma is a super powerful design tool that we use all the time in web development that lets us map out and design our website before we go to the effort of building it out completely in Webflow. So opening up Figma, you'll see that we have a design here for a client that we did a website for a few years ago. And I chose this specific Figma design because the website is super clean and simple, but still looks super professional. Let's take a look at the few elements from our Figma design that we're going to end up building in Webflow. So to start out, we have our nav bar up here with the company logo, a few link items, and a call to action button. And then we have our main hero text with the heading, subheading, and another call to action button. Then we have our hero image with an image of the product with this cool gradient overlaid on it. So now that we know what we're going to build out, let's switch over to Webflow and actually build it. So when you first jump into Webflow, you're going to be met with a ton of tab bars all around the designer. To start out, we're going to work on this left tab bar here, and we'll go through a few of the important tabs here. We have the Add Elements tab where we can select from plenty of pre-made elements to drag and drop onto our Webflow site. We have the Navigator tab where we can change the order and hierarchy of all the elements that we have dragged and dropped onto our page. And then we have the Assets tab where we can see all the images, documents, and Lottie files for our website. Now, I've already taken the liberty of uploading the image files from our Figma design here in the Webflow designer. Here in the center, we actually have our web page that we're going to be building out in a second. And then here on the right, we have the Style, Settings, and Interactions tab. And now this is currently empty right now because we don't have an element selected. But if we select an element from our navigator, like the body element here, you'll see that the Style section automatically updates with all the different styles that we can apply to this body element. Now we also have settings and interactions, but we're not going to be using those very much in this web page. So for example, a way we can use the Style tab to update our body element is our Figma design has a black background throughout the entire web page. So we'll go here in our Style tag, making sure that we've selected the body element, and we will scroll down to the backgrounds color here, and we can select the black color from our Figma design, and you'll see here in our page preview that it is automatically updated to the black background. So next we're going to build out our navigation bar from the Figma design. So to do that, we'll start by adding a new element, and we'll add a section to our body, and we'll give this a name of navbar. And inside our navbar we have obviously our image logo, and whenever you drag and drop an image file in, it'll automatically populate with this placeholder SVG, and all we need to do is click replace image, and we can select our logo file. Next in our navigation bar, we have our links. So we'll go to add elements. We will drag a text link in, and we'll give this a name of navbar link, and I will duplicate this 2 times. So we have 3 navbar links, and then we also have our navbar button. So we'll give this name of navbar button, and you'll see that these are not styled exactly how we like. Let's take a look at a Figma design to see how we should style these. So each of the navbar links is Roboto Mono, regular weight, 16 point, 150% line height. Back into Webflow, we'll apply that same styling. Roboto Mono, normal weight, 16 point, and 150% line height, and that's white. Now every navbar link in Webflow is automatically going to be underlined, so we'll just want to make sure our text decoration is set to none. And now updating the actual content of our elements is easy as double clicking the element and typing in what we want the navbar link to say. Call this page 1, call this one page 2, and page 3. Next up, we have to style our navbar button. So back to the Figma design to see how it was styled, and this has the same text as the navbar links, but it has a 1 pixel border all the way around in this gray color. So we'll go back to Webflow, change the default background color, Roboto Mono, regular weight, 16 point, 150% line height with white text. And then for our border, we'll scroll down even more to the border section, set that to solid, 1 pixel, and we'll set the color to our gray color. And then we'll call this C2A button. Now we have all our elements built out in our nav bar, but all the elements are completely squished together, which is not what we want. So in order to do this, we're going to change the actual layout of our nav bar container. So we'll go here and select the Flex layout. Flex is the one you're probably going to be using the most in Webflow because it allows you to change the orientation and spacing of all the elements inside of your parent element. So we want this to be left to right. We want all the elements on the y-axis to be center aligned, and on the x-axis we want them to be spaced between or pushed apart. And we're running into an issue here because we actually have 5 elements here on our nav bar, and we only want really 2 of them to be pushed apart on either side of the screen. So to fix this, we just need to wrap all of our nav bar links in another parent element. I'll just use a div block here, and you'll see that now our nav bar links and the logo are pushed apart part in the navbar. So again, we'll want to add a little spacing to this. So we'll call this navbar link. And we'll set this one to flex as well. Align everything on the y-axis center. And then we will add maybe 16 pixels of gap in between each element to space it apart. Now, the very last thing we need to do to our navbar is give it a little bit of spacing all the way around so that our logo and navbar links aren't butting up directly against the edges of the page. So to do this, we'll go back to our navbar, and under here in spacing, we'll give it a little bit of padding, maybe 32 pixels this time. And one little helpful tip is you can hold Shift and press Enter when applying padding, and it'll apply that padding to all 4 sides of the element instead of just the one you're working on. That seems like a little much. Maybe we'll adjust this down to 24 pixels. There we go. Next up, we want to build our hero text section that has our main heading, subheading, and the call to action link. So we'll drag and drop another section in, and in here we want to add a container, and let's name these. So let's say hero text section, and then hero text container. And inside of our container, we want a heading, obviously. We want some text. And then for our call to action button, we'll get into this in a little bit, but because it has the arrow, we actually want to use a link block instead of a button. We'll drag and drop a link block in there. So now that we have our elements kind of laid out, let's start to style them. Figma design is PP Mori font, semi-bold, 64 point, 120% line height. So back to Webflow, we'll duplicate these typography settings again. PP Mori, semi-bold, P4, 120%. Set this to white, obviously. And we'll get rid of this default padding that comes on all heading elements, and we'll double click to change the content of our heading and type in whatever we like here. Now we want this to be center aligned as well, so it's in the center of our web page. And then next we'll work on our subheading here. So our subheading is PP Mori as well, regular weight this time, 18 point and 150% line height. And the very last thing we have to build out for our hero text is the call to action button that we have down here that says schedule an intro appointment. And the reason I use the link block instead of the button is because we actually have to have 2 child elements inside of this link block element. So of course we want to have some text. So I'll drag a text block in there, call this hero CTA, and the text inside of our call to action button is Roboto Mono 16.150, same as the heading. And like our navbar links, this also has a blue underline by default. So we'll go ahead and set that to none text decoration. Double click to change the content, and we'll just say hero call to action button. Actually set the text decoration to none on the link block as a whole, and that'll update to get rid of the blue underline. Now the next thing we need to add is the arrow button, or the arrow icon from our Figma design. And one little helpful tip to working with SVGs in Webflow is instead of using the image element, we can actually use the code embed element and copy and paste our SVG code directly into the code element. And then if you set the fill to current color instead of hard coding it, if I change the link block text color here, it'll automatically update the SVG as well. So if I set it to red, it automatically updates there. Of course, we want this to be white to match the rest of our design. And now, just like our navbar, we have to change the orientation of our elements inside of this call to action button. So we'll go back down to flex, and we'll give this maybe 8 pixels of padding. And the very last thing we need to add is a 1 pixel border at the bottom in the white color. Now that we have all our elements completely built out, we just need to do a little tweaking to get the orientation and alignment to match the Figma design. So I'll select our hero text container, set this to flex. I want this to be flex vertical, center align all of our content, and we'll give this maybe 32 pixels of spacing in between the elements. I'll drop in one more section, call this hero image section. Let's make this 100% width and maybe 500 pixels tall. And then we'll scroll down to backgrounds here, image and gradient, and you'll see just like the navbar logo, it automatically populates with a placeholder image. We'll want to select our hero image here. Now you'll see that by default, the image is going to be its true size. So this picture is pretty big. It's almost 2000 pixels wide, much wider than our viewport here. So what we actually want to do is hit the size to cover so that the image will dynamically change its size based on the size of its parent container, which we set to 100% width of the page. So now that we have our image in here, we need to add the gradient. So we'll add another background layer on top of that, select the linear gradient. And one little helpful tip I like to do when working with very subtle gradients like this is I'll set the gradient color to something really bright so I can see the changes I'm making. And then when I'm done, I set it back to the more subtle color, in our case, the black background color here. So we'll want to add another linear color point in the center, set that to transparent, and set our end color to the really bright red so we can see. Make sure this is exactly 50%. And you'll see that our gradient goes from red down to transparent and then back to red again. Now that we know we have the gradient set up correctly, we just need to go through and change the color back to our default black color. And then we have a nice smooth gradient that shows the product image off quite nicely. So now that we have all of these sections built out, we can just go up here and click the toggle preview. We can get a nice little preview of what our page would look like when a visitor navigates to it outside of the Webflow designer. And that is how you can build the perfect Webflow site in just 10 minutes. When you're just getting started and making this on your own, don't expect it to be this quick. I can only make websites this fast because of my years of experience and having built built dozens of websites before. Also, click on this video to watch me fix a terrible website live. I'll explain my full thought process of transforming the websites and the mistakes you're making that are affecting your conversions. Anyways, I'll catch you in the next one.